Without question, the biggest game on Saturday in college football, with all due respect to my friends in the SEC, is the Ohio State at Penn State. And it's the first time, I didn't realize it, that both teams have been ranked in the top five since 1996. Ohio State 4, Penn State 3. The man who'll be behind the microphone in the catbird seat calling the Penn State play-by-play, and he's been doing it for a long time, is Steve Jones. And he joins us now. Steve, you've been involved in a lot of big games over the years. This is pretty big, though. This ranks right up there, right?
Oh, it's certainly one of the big ones. The anticipation, Doug, is incredible around here. People can't wait. I went by the stadium on Tuesday night on my way out to pick up candy for Halloween.
Right.
At some point, you do have to hand it out. And already the students are camped out. They're already camped out because they want to be in the front seat. So Nittanyville was already filled up, and the weather's been great for them. But that's the kind of anticipation there is for this.
I mean, Steve, that's incredible. They've been camping out that long. I mean, my goodness, those are some brave students.
Oh, well, brave students, except they caught the biggest break of all, Doug. It's going to be 80 today, 80 tomorrow. It's going to be like in the 60s on Friday. There's no rain the rest of the week, so I'm not so sure it's that gutsy, and I'm not sure how many classes they're going to.
I mean, that's amazing. Here we are at the end of October, and it's balmy weather up in Happy Valley. That's crazy. Maybe that's a good sign for you guys. Last win for Coach Franklin and the Nittany Lions over Ohio State, 2016, Steve. That goes way back. I had not realized it had been that long.
Well, because the vast majority of the games have been close.
Yes.
I mean, that's why it seems like, well, it really goes back to 2016. But then when you look at the games, it's been a last-second win here, a last-second win there, a block punt here, a block field goal there, something that has happened on each side in the games. And because they've been so close, I think people are surprised to see that one team has kept winning. And I think a big part of that, Doug, you talk about all the big games I've done, and you've been around big games your entire career, so you know what I'm about to talk about. It's the team that finds the one play each half that turns the game. Last year, Penn State's playing at Ohio State. McCord's the quarterback. Curtis Jacobs strips him of the ball, picks it up, and runs 60 yards for a touchdown. Penn State takes the lead. Well, there's your one play. Oh, wait a minute. Holding penalty in the secondary on Marvin. They were and it was legit. They were grabbing the jersey of Marvin Harrison. Ohio State kept the ball, scored a touchdown. See, there's your one play that changes the game right there. And so that's what they need to find. I mean, teams need to find that one play each half, and you don't know which play it's going to be.
Yeah, I remember that play vividly now that you described it. Oh, my goodness. When it came back for the flag, everybody was crazy on the Penn State sidelines. Hey, how's the quarterback, Drew Aller, who's really been amazing when healthy, Steve? I mean, his completion rate is off the charts. Is he looking good for Saturday?
71% on the year, Doug. And when you are a guy that's made 20 career starts at quarterback, you can take as long as you need to make a decision on him. Right? Because there's not going to be anything that they put in the game plan that he doesn't know about. There's not anything that he has not practiced over the course of the past, how many months here? It's 3-4 months and going back to last year. So when you have a quarterback with that much experience that has seen the speed of the game and saw the speed of how Ohio State plays its defense, you can wait till game day to make a decision on him. And I think it's, and they'll probably do that in this particular case.
It's interesting. I know Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, comes from Kansas. And I've only seen one game. I've seen the highlights, but I did watch the USC game, which was an entertaining game. But you guys do a lot of motion, trick plays. I mean, that's kind of what he's known for. And Steve, it's interesting. Everything I read, it's like you bring him in and you do all this craziness leading up to this game for this game. Is that accurate?
Well, it seems like that way, but you have to do it in the other games too to find out whether it works or not.
Right.
And people will kid me about. I think it was a game last week. They're playing Wisconsin, and they'd gone back-to-back plays of quarterback draw with Tyler Warren at quarterback. And when they played back the highlight of the Bo Pribula touchdown pass to Khalil Dinkins, I said, and Pribula's the quarterback. I have to identify who the quarterback is on every play because you don't know
Right.
who's lining up. And with Warren, what's interesting, Doug, is they'll put him at wide out, they'll put him in the slot, they'll put him up against the line of scrimmage as a tight end, they'll put him back as a wing back, H-back player, they'll put him in the backfield as a fullback, they'll put him at quarterback, and as you know on the USC game, he actually snapped one and then caught it for a touchdown. It's his not just his versatility and his ability to do that because he is a great athlete, but you have to be so smart to pick up all these different spots and not make mistakes in those spots. There's a certain way he has to play when he's at wide receiver, a certain way he has to play when he's in the backfield, a certain way he has to play in the slot. You have to be so smart and so in tune with what's going on because every play, while the defense is trying to figure out where you are, you have to figure out where you are and what you're supposed to do. And that's made a big, big difference in this team. They will run a variety of things, but you notice they don't get delays or anything like that. They've been well drilled and well schooled, and Andy's done a great job with them.
You know, you mentioned Tyler Warren. That's who we're talking about here. Steve, is he the best athlete on the field we'll see on Saturday?
Boy, there's going to be a lot of NFL athletes on that field on Saturday. You and I know that, between Tuamalo and Sawyer and Cody Simon and Denzel Burke and the three wide receivers for Ohio State. I thought USC's were really impressive. These three are better. Okay? I mean, Ibuka's outstanding because I've seen him 100 times. Carnell Tate last year, saw him for the first time, terrific. I haven't seen Jeremiah Smith in person, but they tell me, I watched the tape, there's a wow factor all over the tape. And then you're talking about the Penn State guys, Abdul Carter, Dennis Sutton, Jalen Reed, A.J. Harris. You keep going through the long list of guys, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Tyler Warren. There's a lot of NFL talent on the field. Will Howard and Drew Aller would be guys that would fall into that category. So that's what makes a game like this dynamic, and you see it all the time in the SEC. There's so much future pro talent on the field in an SEC game. We see it every week. It's the same story with this game.
Hey, listen, you're a Pennsylvania guy. Will Howard is too, the quarterback for Ohio State. He goes to K-State, coming back and having a really good year for the Buckeyes. But this is a meaningful game for the young man, and he's talked about it. It's going to be special. I think that maybe adds a little pressure on his shoulders. What do you think?
It can, because Aller's from Ohio.
Yeah, okay.
And Aller had to go back last year and play at Ohio. And certainly there's a pressure to try and do it maybe in front of your, home state fans or whatever it may be. But there's always that great sports philosopher that you and I subscribe to. One, Michael Tyson. Right? Everybody has a plan until you get hit.
Yeah.
Right? And at that point, all that emotion about where you are goes by the boards. I think he's an excellent quarterback. He's already led his team to a Big 12 championship. In watching him, the accuracy with which he throws the ball is very impressive. And what makes him, to me, that one step dangerous is, Doug, he has the ability to run the ball. I mean, he's not Milroe, okay? There aren't many Milroes out there.
No.
Right? Okay, that can do that. But let's face it, Aller and Howard both throw the ball better than Milroe. Sorry, Alabama fans, it's just a fact. But running the ball, he's special. But Howard can run. And so if you get pressure on him, he'll evade it. And they'll also do a couple of design things with him that are impressive. That's what really helped Penn State last week with Wisconsin, because when Purbuella had to take over in the second half, Bo can run. And when Bo's ability in the option game opened up the running game, because he's so good at handling the ball and he's so solid in his own ability to run and his cutback ability, right? I think it got Wisconsin off balance. So a quarterback that can do that, which Howard can, makes a big difference.
The key to this game, again, I'm listening to podcasts, reading all the scouting reports. I'm breaking it down, Steve, right?
Okay.
Obviously, the Ohio State offensive line is banged up.
Okay.
You lose your left tackle at the beginning of the year, and now his replacement is iffy for the game. Penn State's front seven defensively, to me, they look pretty darn good, and they're tenacious. They get after you. They're aggressive. They're physical. Is that the key? I mean, Ohio State's offensive line against Penn State's D?
Yeah, and there's two parts to unpack there, Doug, because you've got a really good handle on it. I work with Jack Ham on the Penn State
Yeah,
broadcast.
that's awesome.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
That poor guy for 25 seasons has carried me.
That's awesome, man.
All right. But he is perfect to talk about this particular setup because Ohio State has been a predominantly left-handed team this year. He played against the Raiders with Art Shell and Gene Upshaw, the predominant NFL left-handed team, two Hall of Famers on the left side of the offensive line. When Simmons was out there, and Simmons was started all the way through and didn't get hurt till the second half of the Oregon game. So he's been out now like 5 quarters, and he's not coming back the rest of the year. They struggled at left tackle against Nebraska, and then he got hurt. And then they took the guard Jackson and they moved him to left tackle, and they had Montgomery, the backup guard, come in. When you're a predominantly one-side team, it doesn't mean they can't run right. They can, but that's where the way they prefer to go. They couldn't do that against Nebraska, and they didn't have 100 yards rushing in the game. So that is something that they're going to have to solve going to this game because Simmons is not coming back. And so how do you handle it? And is Fryer good enough on the right side? Because they've moved Fryer all over the place in the last 2 years of that offensive line, and they found him a spot on the right side. Now, let's flip it to the Penn State side. We know Carter and Vanover and Smith Vilbert and Denai Dennis Sutton are right there in that same category with Sawyer and Tulamau and people like that. Okay. Where Penn State is different than the last couple of times they played Ohio State. In my opinion, they're exponentially better at the defensive tackle spot. And that's where I think Ohio State has hurt them in the past. Devon Thomas and Zane Durant is having an exceptional year. All right. Kazai Izzard, 5th-year player, veteran. Thomas, 6th-year player, veteran. Right. Alonzo Ford's coming on and playing well. Akeem Beeman. So they have depth there, and their defensive tackle play has become much better. So as you watch the game, let's see what Ohio State can do at generating a run game off the edge and whether the tackles hold up, right? If they do, that's a great sign for Ohio State. And let's see on the other side whether Penn State gets movement up front with their defensive tackles, which makes a big difference, not only against the running game, but quarterbacks don't like pressure in their face.
Yeah, it's gonna be a game. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as that Oregon game, 32-31, but I do think it's going to be close towards the very end, and maybe a low-scoring game.
Yeah, and that's what Oregon did a great job against Ohio State offensively. Number one, they have great speed. Great speed.
Yes.
But they took the two ends, Tulamalo and Sawyer, and pushed them way out. And they did a great job on the Ohio State defensive tackles of pushing them out, which gave Gabriel the opportunity to climb in the pocket and then have a free lane to throw the ball. You notice against Nebraska, those two defensive tackles played really well against Nebraska. So they made the adjustment. That's going to be important in this game.
Well, it's going to be fun. It's going to be an absolute blast. And those of us in SEC country, I like these early kicks. It's 11 Central Time, Steve.
Yeah.
So, we watch game day or the Fox pregame. We get right into the game, and then you get into the SEC. I like these early kickoffs. I don't know if you do or not.
Well, the early kickoff part is fine with me because I'm going to go home and put my feet up. I'm going to watch some football after that. It's going to probably include an SEC game along the way because they play great football and I enjoy watching it. The fans, though, the parking lot's open at 7. I got to leave my house at this time. I got to do this. So for the fans, it's not quite as the noon kick brings with it some issues, but then again, you're in Central Time, so sometimes you have those 11 a.m. kicks, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and President Trump may show up at this game. My goodness. Throw that into the factor. And listen, when he showed up for Alabama, Georgia, it was the best game of the season. So who knows? Maybe he'll bring good luck to this game. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out. And last I checked, the home team won that game.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
If that means anything, even though I don't sense it does.
That was the high point of the Alabama season up to this point. Hey, for our listeners, Steve Jones, I just got to mention this, Steve, how long you've been doing it at Penn State. Listen, you're a Penn State grad. You still teach class, I think, on campus. You're still doing radio shows, podcasts. I mean, you were the sideline guy. Now for 25 years, you've been in the catbird seat. You mentioned Jack Ham. You've been doing basketball since the early 1980s. My goodness, Steve, you have been around the Penn State campus for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, no job advancement. It's stay down. It's you talk about being fortunate in what you get to
Yes.
do. I've been fortunate to stay here. My family, it's a great place to raise a family. Do a job I love. I mean, my office overlooks the 40-yard line.
Man, that's great.
My office co-worker is Jack Ham.
Oh.
Right? It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you talk about being fortunate. I've been fortunate beyond words.
Oh my goodness. And to think of those guys, we don't have enough time, but to think about I'm thinking about all those great players that Jack played with.
Oh
Oh
God!
my goodness.
I've gotten a chance to know most of those guys. I mean, that's why it was so painful when Franco passed away, because Franco Harris, because I got to really know him. And I don't know if I have time for one quick story about that.
Sure, please.
Jack and I were speaking at an event called the Duquesne Club down in Pittsburgh. And it took place at a golf course. And Jack and I were going to go out and play golf when we were done. Well, this coincided with the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. So Franco and his wife Dana showed up at the Duquesne Club. And when it was over, Franco was putting together a series of interviews for a podcast he was doing to look back on the 50th of the Immaculate Reception. So Franco sat down with Jack, and I was the only other person for a few minutes. Sue Paterno was there, which was kind of neat. Right. And then I was the only person there along with Dana, because Dana was on video. And I got to hear the whole thing, right? Which took about 20 minutes. And it was just like being in a time capsule. Jack didn't see the play, by the way. He was sitting on the bench. He heard everybody yelling and screaming. Went, okay, well, something good happened?
Wow. I didn't know that.
Right. Well, no, Franco didn't either. But the one that I knew that Franco didn't know is that the Immaculate Reception took place on Jack's birthday.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, but it was just fascinating to sit there. And then 3-4 months later, Franco passes away. And you're like, oh, man. Like 3 days before they were going to honor him at the Raiders game.
Wow.
But, to get to know all those guys that played back in Jack's era has been pretty cool. So.
I bet. And it's going to be, again, on Saturday. Listen, the loser is not out of the 12-team playoff.
No.
But the winner certainly has a leg up to go to the Big Ten championship. So needless to say, there's a lot on the line Saturday, as there always is at the midway point in these Big Ten games.
And that's what makes, to me, that's what the 12-team playoff. Remember, Doug, they were telling us it'll take away from the regular season. They're wrong. And
Right.
I knew they were wrong the second they said that, because they said we've gone into Novembers now in the past since 2014, and they've really narrowed it down to only 5 to 7 or 8 teams that can be in it. Well, now you've got a pool of 25 teams out there, maybe 30 on November 1st that can go out and still be a part of this, right? Like, for example, Alabama fell into the 2-loss pool.
Yes.
They're not out of it.
Nope.
They're not out of it. Okay? Well, that's great. Okay? So they've got big games coming up the entire month. And each game is going to be like a playoff game for them, which will raise the stakes each week. See, that's, if they were in the 2-loss pool a year ago, they are out of it. They're not out of it. They're in it, and their games are big, big games down the stretch to get there. And I think that's what people were missing in their thought process of the 12-team playoff that you and I both knew about, because we've talked about it before, that it was going to play out this way, that more teams would be involved in it, and November would be more exciting, and that's what you want.
Yeah, and next week, oh, by the way, LSU gets a night game when they host Alabama. That's a shocker, right?
Yeah, I know. I know. Going to Baton Rouge for some odd reason. Let's give it a shot. Let's see if the lights work.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And that's a game where one team's going to walk out with a third loss. Well, if one team walks out with a third loss, now it changes a lot of dynamics. So, in essence, a game on November 9th between two loss teams that in the past would have been like, okay, great, let's see what bowl game we end up in reality is an in-season playoff game.
Yeah, that's, in my mind, that's the first elimination game.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, there's a lot of big games, but everybody's going to be
right.
knocking each other off now. The domino effect starts, and I believe it starts next Saturday night in Baton Rouge. That is the first of the elimination games for the teams who have the hope of making the Final 12.
Right. Well said, Doug. That's exactly right. It's an elimination game. I mean, but fans, you talked about Penn State, Ohio State. Well, what makes these games great, and it happens in the SEC every week, fans love games with stakes. Well, Saturday is a game with stakes. You mentioned LSU, Alabama, game has stakes. See, that's what draws us in and gets the casual fan to a fanatic status, right? The diehard's always there. It's the casual fan that goes, hey, this is really cool. I think I want to see that.
I think my wife may even watch Penn State, Ohio State with me Saturday.
Well, tell her I said hi then.
That tells you how big that is.
There you go. It must be really big, or she's going to at least say, let's see if this is worth it.
Yeah. She'll hang in with me for a while, so we'll see what happens. So, hey, Steve, I appreciate it, my man. Have fun Saturday.
Doug, it's always a pleasure. You're the best. Appreciate you.